Hello kids, how are you? This is Mr. Mauricio, and today we're going to talk about past simple. But before that, let me tell you a little story about a boy called Tom. This is Tom in 2004. Tom is 3 years old. He plays with trucks. He cries a lot. He eats baby food. He goes to bed at 8. He doesn't like girls. This is Tom in 2014. He's thinking about 2004, when he was a kid. He was 3. He played with trucks. He cried a lot. He ate baby food. He went to bed at 8. He didn't like girls. I'm going to ask you some questions now. Is Tom 3 now? Of course not. Now he's an adolescent. He's not a baby anymore. Does Tom play with trucks now? Nope. Does Tom cry a lot now? No again. Does Tom eat baby food now? Of course not. Does Tom like girls now? Yes, he does. Remember, he's an adolescent now in 2014. All the actions we saw in the pictures, are they in the past? The answer is yes. Are they connected with the present? No. All the actions finished. Do we know when they happened? Yes, we know. In 2004. Well, now that we know Tom, let me tell you a little bit about the topic of this class, which is past simple. We use past simple to talk about events in the past that are finished and that have no connection to the present. We usually know when the action happened. In the timeline you see here, you can see the past, the present, and the future. Tom cried in the past, but he doesn't do it in the present. The action is finished. In simple words, past simple describes actions or events that happened at a specific moment in the past. In our example, all the events happened when Tom was 3 years old. Now let's talk a little bit about pronunciation. The ed termination of the verb in past simple can be pronounced in 3 different ways: as t, d, or it. First, we pronounce the ed termination as t when the verb ends in the following sounds: p, f, s, sh, ch, or k. Example: hoped, laughed, kissed, washed, watched, liked. As you can see, it is incorrect to say hoped, laughed, kissed, or washed. You have to pronounce it as T and say hoped, laughed, kissed, etc. When the final sound of a verb is t or d, we pronounce it id. For example, he wanted an ice cream. They ended the game. For the rest of the sounds, we pronounce it as D. Example, he cried a lot. He played with trucks. Now, let's discuss a bit about the form of past simple. Past simple only requires a verb in past simple form after the subject when we use the affirmative or positive form. In the case of the verb to be, we use was or were. Example, he was 3. I was 3. They were 3. You were 3. We were 3. As usual, the use of was or were will depend on the subject of the sentence. I, he, she, and it will take was, you, we, and they will take were. Remember that in English we have regular verbs and irregular verbs. Regular verbs are those who follow a certain rule. In this case, we add ed at the end of the verb to make a past simple verb. Example, he played with trucks. He cried a lot. Remember that when the verb ends in y, for example the verb cry, and before the y you have a consonant, in this case r, you have to change the y for I and add ed to the verb. So cry goes to cried. There are also irregular verbs. Irregular verbs don't follow any rule. They just change their form in different ways. Example, he ate baby food. Ate is the past tense of eat. Another example, he went to bed at 8. Went is the past tense of go. As you can see, these verbs don't take ed at the end. And it's also impossible for us to know how they are going to change. The list of irregular verbs is very long. But fortunately, you can find a summary of that list on the back of your book. So take a look at it and try to learn some of them. Well, for the negative form of the past simple, we just have to add the auxiliary verb didn't before the verb. And the verb must be in its infinitive form. In case you don't remember what the infinitive form is, the infinitive form is just a verb with no modifications. No ed, no ing, no s. Nothing at the end. Just the original form of the verb. Now, if we are talking about the past, you may be wondering why we are using a verb with no modification at all, especially with no ed at the end. Well, the past tense in this case isn't the auxiliary verb didn't, so you don't need it in the verb. An example, they didn't want to go to school yesterday. As you can see, the verb want is in its infinitive form. So the past tense is in the auxiliary verb didn't. Remember, the didn't indicates the past tense in this sentence. Now, how do we make questions in past simple? Well, we have to start with the auxiliary verb did, then use a subject, and then the main verb of the sentence. For example, did he cry a lot? Remember, we can also use a WH word before the auxiliary verb did. Just in case you don't remember, WH words are what, why, where, when, who, etc. For example, what did he like? He liked trucks. In the case of the verb be, you have to use was or were, depending on the subject. We already talked about that. For example, was he 3? Now, let's see if you can answer some simple questions. But before that, let's make a little summary of all we studied. Remember that past simple, we use it to talk about actions or events that happened at a specific time in the past. Also, remember that we have regular and irregular verbs. Regular verbs follow a rule, which is basically add ed at the end of the verb. Irregular verbs don't follow any rules, and they change their form. And remember that you have a list of irregular verbs on the back of your book. Well, before we continue, I advise you to pause this video and try to answer the questions you have in front of you. Then we will check together. Okay, now pause your video. If you're listening to this part, it means you have already answered all the questions here. So let's take a look at them. Number 1. Are we talking about the past or the present? Well, we have been talking about the past, of course. Are the actions connected to the present? No, remember that past simple describes actions that already finished, and they have no connection with the present. Did you find 3 regular verbs? If you did, that's good. If you didn't, try to do it. Can you make this sentence in the past? He wins the match. The answer is he won the match. How would you ask someone about a concert they went to yesterday? And there's of course more than one correct answer. You can say, for example, how was the concert yesterday? Or did you like the concert yesterday? Well, kids, that was the lesson for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And see you in the classroom. Bye.